Welcome to another episode of The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors tell you all about their books. You can find us here at LTV if you go online on ltveh.org and search for The Writer's Dream. We are also on Facebook. If you have a question for me, please message me through the Facebook page. We're also on Cablevision Channel 20, Thursdays at 3 o'clock. And we are also on YouTube, so just look for The Writer's Dream. Today's guest is Robert L. Fouch, and he has written Christmas Carol and The Defenders of Claus, which is a morality play, right?
Exactly.
Just teasing. Okay, so tell us about the book. It's a Christmas book.
Yes. It's about a little girl named Carol, obviously, and she's obsessed with Christmas. And everybody, because she's obsessed with Christmas, everybody, happens often in schools, teases her about it. But it turns out that she has powers, and she's one of the people that helps protect Santa Claus from any bad things that might happen to him. So that's basically the story. And I had the idea, just Christmas Carol popped into my head one day out of nowhere. And then I thought about the idea, and it sort of took off from there.
Okay, so we're going to ask you to do an elevator pitch. And for our viewers who don't know what an elevator pitch is, this is something, if you find yourself on an elevator between floors 1 and 15 with a publisher who can make you famous, or a publicist, or anybody who can make you famous, you have, maybe 30 seconds to convince them to do something with your book. What would you say?
Well, I would say pretty much what I said earlier, but I would also add that she's a girl that doesn't quite fit in. And when she discovers this little magic she has about her, it's like she finds her place in the world. And she loves Christmas, she loves Santa. What more could you ask for in a book?
Exactly.
And she's thrilled to be able to protect me, and she's a little scared about it. She doesn't know that she can do what they're asking of her. So it's also a journey about trying to find that what's within you.
Okay, so I'm going to read some reviews. You have some really nice reviews. This one says, I just read this delightful book with the intention of giving it to my grandchildren to read. They will be sure to enjoy this witty Christmas tale. It contains the charming heroine, Christmas Carol, who after all loves everything Christmas, and an enchanting cast of characters. The author does a wonderful job of weaving together a fantastic adventure that will warm the heart of every child who reads it. Robert Fouch is gifted at describing the book's story in a way that a child can feel, hear, see, taste, and smell. I especially love the character of Mr. Winters, Carol's mysterious and quirky teacher. All teachers are quirky. The secret of how Santa really distributes all those presents to the children of the world is explained in a new and original way. I can't wait to hear what my grandchildren think of the book, and I hope the author writes a sequel. Okay. There's also another one that I think is, for you, is very important, because this is a children's book, and this is from a teacher. A teacher is somebody who, I'll just read it. I participated in Read Aloud in a 6th grade class. I read this book to the students and asked them to write brief reviews. Here are some of their comments. I absolutely love this book. The plot and theme are amazing. I felt like I was in Carol's shoes. This book brought amazement and wonder to my eyes, and I like that it lets your imagination run wild and all the details are wonderful. Dear heart. And I liked, that's evidently their writing name, and I liked all the thought put in this book and the details. I think this book is amazing. The book had a nice feel to it about Christmas and how Christmas isn't about getting, it's about giving. Favorite parts named by many, the imagination in the story, the trip to New York, her ability to stop time, her special powers, her trip to the Dominican Republic, and the appearances of the candy cane. I love the book. So, I mean, these are really, I mean, you wrote this for kids, and kids are saying great things about it, so the book is a success right there. So, every Every writer takes a journey. What was unique about yours?
Well, the funny thing is I didn't actually start out to be a children's writer. I always knew I wanted to write a novel, something, the great American novel.
The great American
that every
novel.
writer wants to write.
Yeah.
And I spent probably 15, 16, 17 years really pursuing that goal. I've got 3 novels in the drawer, as they say, adult literary type novels. And I just was never successful. I had some nibbles from agents and some encouraging words, but I was never able to push through. And then when my son was 8, I have one son, now he's 15. When he was 8, I was reading to him, which we did every night. It's one of my favorite things to do, was to read to him every night. And it just popped into my head, like, well, why don't I try to write a children's book? And then I asked him, and he got really excited about it, and that made me even more excited about it. And then my first book was about Bigfoot, because when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Bigfoot. I lived in a rural area in West Virginia, and I used to spend a lot of times by myself in the woods, and you hear a snap of a twig or something, and that's Bigfoot. He's coming to get it. So that was the first idea I had, and that led to my first book, which was Little and Big, and then it took off from there. So I feel like I'm a children's writer, and I feel like I probably should have been from the beginning, but it was sort of a winding journey to get here, but I'm here now.
Yeah, I never wanted to write for adults. I mean, mine are, they're kids books. I call them kids books because it's to me, it's very hard to say children's books because they're really not children's books, but a young reader, let's put it that way,
Right.
young reader. And I always thought that if you write for children, the books last. If you write for adults, you may get on the bestseller list, but it's on the bestseller list for a few weeks, and then
Right.
they want the next book
Right.
and the next book. So I just thought that children's literature was something that if you were going to make that contribution, it would be more long-lasting.
Because there's always, kids grow up and they grow out, but then there are new kids that
Yeah,
might
that's
find
right.
your
There's
book
always
that might fall in love with
I mean,
it.
you and I do book fairs at schools, and there's always a new 5th grade.
Right.
There's
New
always a new
generations.
4th grade.
Yeah.
So every year, even though you sold maybe 10 books to the 5th grade of 2019, 2020, there'll be a
Right.
whole new crop.
Exactly.
So
And the good thing about children, when they really like something, especially if you can get a series, which this isn't quite a series yet, but I do have a sequel coming out.
we have all those other holidays.
Right, exactly. I had to think up characters. But when kids really love something, they want every book in the series, so they want, they want to get the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
they're so passionate about it. So that's a great thing about children's literature too.
Yeah, my inspiration was Nancy Drew. And I would, when I was a kid, it was okay for kids to get on buses and subways and go into the city when they were 11 or 12 years old. Not so much today, I guess. But every time I would save my allowance, and then I would go into the Doubleday bookstore. There's no Doubleday bookstores anymore, but and I would go in and I would buy the next Nancy Drew or the next Judy Bolton, and
Right.
that I couldn't read them fast enough.
Exactly.
So it's a great market. So what was the most fun about writing this book?
Basically, just letting my imagination go wild. That's one thing I really like about children's literature is you can be as goofy as you want to be. You can come up with the craziest things, and as long as you do it well, kids will follow you right along. And to me, that's fun. And just creating Carol, I have a real affection for her, and also for the teacher that one of the reviewers mentioned. I always liked teachers that were a little bit quirky and a little bit off.
So do the kids. Most kids like you to be a
there's
little crazy.
If there's a little mystery about them, I'm like, why are they doing that stuff?
Or what are they going to do next?
Right. It keeps them guessing. It keeps the kids' attention, and I always liked those type of teachers. And so I really invested a lot in the Mr. Winters character and the relationship between him and
Well, I
Carol.
think the affection that you have for the character of Carol obviously comes through because the kids say they love Carol.
Yeah, I hope so. It seems like.
So, yeah, Christmas Carol. My daughter-in-law's name is Carol. And she is also a Christmas nut.
Oh, good.
She
Well,
really
she should
is.
read it.
I'm gonna give the book to. She has a son, 11 years old.
good.
He'll love it. What was I gonna say? So, can you tell us, without giving too much away, what Carol's secret powers are?
Well,
Magic
as one of the
powers.
reviews mentioned, she can stop time, and that Defenders, they're not just there to protect Santa, because really who would hurt Santa, although in the book
Exactly.
there is a bad guy that's out to get him. They stop time, which allows them to be able to deliver all the presents around the world. Because you kids always wondered, how in the world could Santa get clear around the world? And so the Defenders, that's one of their duties, is basically to slow time down so it gives Santa plenty of time to deliver all the toys for Christmas morning. She can make what they call North Pulses, which she sort of manipulates time and space, and it's like a pulse of energy, and she helps defeat like bad people with those. And she's just got a little, and she can also, I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, don't give too much away.
She can also create portals where she can go from one place to another in a short amount of time.
Yeah, well, that's what I always thought. Santa must have had portals.
Yeah, and that's one of the
something.
That's one of the mysteries of her character, is how she can do that, and you find out in the book. Well, because really most Defenders can't, but she can, and there's a reason why. So you find that out in the book.
Yeah, I think it's very important to believe in Santa.
I do too.
It's a concept, you know.
I was disappointed when the day came when my son didn't believe anymore. It was a sad day.
Well,
he didn't care, but I was sad. You know, he doesn't believe.
Well, I
anymore.
fixed that. I said to my son, "Oh, so you don't believe in Santa? I guess you're not going to get any presents." So he lied to
Suddenly
me.
believe
Oh,
again,
yes, I believe it. And Macy's even has believe at Christmas
There's something
time.
magical. My mom is a Christmas nut. She always was since we were little, and she admits she goes way overboard. So I got my love of Christmas honestly from her, and we used to have. And my grandmother we would have 2 Christmases, one with my grandmother and one with my mom. So Christmas has always meant a lot to me. So it kind of made sense that I came up with a Christmas story.
Well, my family was just the opposite, because our family business was florist and gardener. So at Christmas time, it was really very busy. In fact, the first story I wrote was about the basement in our house. We had this great big old brownstone house, and the basement would be transformed into a place where all of these Christmas decorations were created. A lot of these decorations went into cemeteries. There were wreaths and blankets and stuff like that. And to me, it was magical. I loved it, and my mother would create these gorgeous things. But by the time Christmas came, the entire family was completely exhausted, because it started at Thanksgiving, and I'd be wrapping these little sticks with decorations so you could stick them in the wreaths and whatnot. And I'll never forget one Christmas. I think this is a hilarious story. My mother was so exhausted. We didn't have a Christmas tree yet, so she went to the supermarket and she picked out this thing that only had branches on one side. So I put it in the stand. It was always my job because my mother had had it by that time. And I decorated the tree, and only branches on one side, so it collapsed. And that was the end of the Christmas tree that year. But that was just the opposite. But I still maintained my absolute love for Christmas. So when I got married and had a house of my own, I went nuts.
Yep.
So,
Got to get into the spirit.
so tell me about Mr. Winters.
Well, he's basically sent to get Carol. And he was a teacher in his real life before he became a Defender. He's a Defender of Claus. But he's sort of sent to scout her out. So he worms his way into this. Carol's taken care of by this rich uncle who's got her in this hoity-toity school, and Mr. Winter sort of weasels his way into this school so he can...
Is the rich uncle a good guy or a bad guy?
He's not a particularly nice guy. He took Carol's mother had died when she was young, and the father vanished under mysterious circumstances. That seems to happen a lot in children's literature, where the parents just disappear.
Just disappear.
Yeah, which I guess it gives the kids, agency to do what they need to do in the books. But so she loves her uncle, but it's not the greatest relationship. So Mr. Winters weasels his way into this school to sort of scout out Carol and see if she's really cut out to be a Defender, and that's how that relationship develops.
Okay, so do we have any other characters besides Uncle?
Well, there are
Carol?
other Defenders that she meets, and she befriends one in particular, Ramon, who is from the Dominican Republic. My family, my wife is from the Dominican Republic, so they always say, write what you know. Mm-hmm. So I worked in a Dominican angle into the story, and I also kind of wanted to include other kids, other nationalities, other cultures, and I love the Dominican culture. So Ramon is one of the Defenders, and she sort of develops a relationship with him, and they go on a mission to the Dominican Republic to rescue a Defender that has been kidnapped by the bad guy. And that's one of my favorite scenes, is where she meets Ramon's family, and the grandmother is based on my wife's grandmother loosely, and Carol doesn't speak Spanish, but she feels like she's a part of the family immediately. And a couple people really, and in a couple of the reviews and some of the people who read the book really focused in on that part. I guess they could feel how much I loved the culture and how much I loved those characters.
And also, I'm looking at the book now, and I see, I mean, this is not just a short story. This is really a story with quite a bit of depth to it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And also, because we always talk about setting, and some of the book takes place at Rockefeller Center.
Right. New York is a great Christmas city, obviously, for so many reasons. That's funny. That was one of the things when I first got my agent, who eventually became my editor. One of her criticisms, she loved the book, but she wanted me. She said, funny enough, it's not Christmassy enough. So I really went in and tried to, like the sights and the smells and the Rockefeller, the tree, and everything that you love in New York that's Christmassy. I tried to incorporate into the story and make Carol she's not from New York. She comes to New York with her uncle, who's in the toy business. And she just is overwhelmed and excited and kind of drives her uncle crazy because every little thing in New York City that she sees and just freaks her out, and she loves it. So that I really tried to work on that, and it was like when I reread the book, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's right. There really isn't that much Christmassy stuff. It's funny how you can write something and not see the forest for the trees, or whatever the phrase is.
Right.
So it's good to have an editor that would see that, and it made the book so much better. And yes, setting was very important, obviously, in a Christmas story, because you wanted to get that, where she goes to see Santa and all the different things.
Yeah, I know probably my most vivid visual of Christmas is one year I went in to see the tree and it was snowing.
That is magical.
And I mean, to have snow at Christmas time in New York doesn't always happen, but it was like the most gorgeous Christmas card you could ever. It was like being in a living Christmas card.
Right.
And that was, of course, now if you go in to see the tree, there are so many people.
Yeah.
New York has really become such a tourist mecca. And I remember a couple of years ago coming out of 30 Rock, with it, right behind the tree, and looking across Rockefeller Plaza, and all you see is cell phones. I mean, it's pretty because it's all these lights, and it's like people all holding a candle, but they're holding their cell phones. And
it's like they're not in the moment. They're not in the moment. Like when you're worried about having your cell phone up.
Yeah. Now I don't. I like the picture in the mind.
Yeah.
So
you
so I'm
get to
glad you
experience.
included that, because it's something to share with kids around the world. So how did you publish?
Well, my first book, The Bigfoot Story, I did self-publishing, independent publishing, as they fancily call it now.
Indies, we're called.
Yes, and that was a great experience. I got to do some events, especially in my hometown. I'm from West Virginia originally. But it's a lot of work, and you do everything, obviously. It's self-publishing, so you're doing everything yourself. And it's a little bit, I think it might even be harder for a children's book, because like with adult mysteries or whatever, adults are online and they can spread the word, but that doesn't work as well with kids, where you might not get a viral type thing happen. So it was a challenge, but I'm glad I did it, but it was a challenge. But then I decided with my next book, with Christmas Carol, I really wanted to try to go the traditional route. And I wanted to get an agent and do it the hard way, but the way that I thought was...
Did you get an agent?
And I did get an agent, yeah. And it was like a dream come true, because I've been trying to get one for more than 20 years through various projects. It's really difficult to get noticed.
Yes.
But she really liked the story, and we worked on it. She had been an editor before, and she liked the story, but she said, we need to do some work. And she sent me her first notes, her revision notes, 7 pages, single-spaced, of things I needed to do to the book. So she was a very tough editor, which I wanted. That's what I was really desperate for, was somebody that would push me to try to make the book better. And then I lost her as my agent. She went back to the editing side. I guess she decided she didn't like the agent side. But she took my book with her, so that's how I got my publishing deal.
All right.
She took it to Sky Pony as the publisher. Sky Horse it's their children's imprint is Sky Pony.
What's the name of your publisher?
Sky Horse is the broader publisher, and their children's imprint is Sky Pony, which is kind of cute.
That's great.
And they're publishing the sequel also.
But with a traditional publisher and an agent, how did that work out for your marketing?
Well, they do a lot of it. I mean, that's how I got some of those reviews. They know who to send it to. Like, there are blogs that do kids' books that review them regularly, including like kids. There's a couple. There was one that was like 11-year-old boy, who publishers send him their books because he does these great reviews and he's kind of got a following. So they know all that stuff that I wouldn't know. So that is very beneficial. But I have some other author friends, some who have been in the business for many years, and they said it used to be like you could get, if it was a big book and they loved it, you could get a big ad in the New York Times or something, and those days are long gone, unless you're, Stephen King or somebody.
But do they do anything special for you around Christmas time?
Not really. I mean, it was just mostly just getting the word out. They would send it to all the usual outlets and Kirkus and the different people that do review of books and such. There wasn't any. I did a lot of stuff on my own, which most authors have to do now. I actually did something that was a lot of fun. I'm not sure how effective it was, but it was a blast. I took Carol with me to the city, and I wrote like a little story of us going to the city together, and my wife and my son went with me to help me. And we went to different locations that were in the book and gave a book away. And throughout the day I would post our adventures on social media, and we would find some little kid and give that kid a book.
Oh, that's great.
Sign it for him, and some people were like a little
don't touch
some
my
weird
kid.
guy walking up to you on the street trying to hand you a book. But
Yeah.
most people were really excited, and it was really fun. I think I'm going to do it again for the sequel.
You have to
just
try
make
to
a day
get
of it.
the people who are from out of town. They're less suspicious.
Right? Yeah, friendlier, not as cynical about the world.
No. So what other things have you done? I know you belong to Long Island Children's Writers and Illustrators and do the book events there. Has that been good for you, or is that just because it's so seasonal?
It's a little bit of a challenge. That is one challenge with a seasonal
Yeah.
book. Like we do a lot of it. Most of the events seem to be in the spring, which doesn't work all that well for a Christmas book.
yes,
But
it's true.
the kids don't seem to care. I've been surprised by. They just see. I mean, kids, Christmas is Christmas, and
Yes,
it doesn't
yeah.
matter what time of year is. They get excited about it. So
Yeah.
they see a Christmas story, and So I've sold a good many books at those events, and it's been fun meeting kids. And I've done one from like the same school from the previous year, and some of the kids remembered the book and told me how much they liked it. So it's very rewarding, that sort of thing, to interact with the kids. So
Yeah. So do you have a website of your own?
yes, it's just robertfouch.com,
Okay.
and I initially paid someone to put it together for me because
Right.
it's beyond me. I'm not the most technically
Oh,
savvy.
yeah. And even if you try to do it yourself, it
Yeah.
not as good because they know how to connect it
Right.
to other things. I mean, I don't even like to think about what I pay for my
Yeah.
website. But when I do a blog on my website, at the end of the blog, I just click on the Facebook icon, and I can put the whole thing on Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram and
Yeah,
and
once you have it set up, it's
yeah,
pretty
it's great.
pretty easy to
it's
use. It's
great.
just
I mean,
a
I
matter
could
of
do a
getting it.
blog a day if I really wanted
Right.
to.
I wish I had time to do more of that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
and well, I just don't want to do a blog a day.
Yeah,
So
it's a lot of work.
Sometimes I think that this whole writing thing has completely taken over my life, and it isn't even the writing. Sometimes I can't get to the writing.
Right.
And I'm actually working on 2 books at the same time now, and I'm thinking about taking one of them and trying to do traditional, but because what difference does it make?
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Yeah.
I have books out there, and so maybe
Right.
I'll take this. It's not part of the series. It's a separate book, and we'll see what. It's still for kids. I don't seem to be able to make it into the adult world
Yeah.
somehow.
I don't think I want to. I kind of like where I am now. I
Yeah, I
love
do
writing
too.
for kids. I've written a young adult book that I just sent to my agent, and I'm kind of eagerly awaiting to see what she thinks of it.
So you have
And
a
it's-
young
it's-
adult book.
Yes, I just finished it, and
Oh,
it still
great.
it might need some work. I need to wait and see what she thinks.
Can you give us a little hint
Yeah,
about what it's about?
I'm from West Virginia, and it's a lot heavier topic than Christmas Carol. It's based loosely on the opioid crisis
Oh, yeah.
and what that's done to a lot of the kids in my home state, everywhere. It's not just West Virginia,
Yeah.
but West Virginia's been hit.
West Virginia has
has
really,
really
got a
been hit
serious
hard.
problem.
Yeah, and there are kids that both their parents are I hate
Gone.
to say it, dead, in jail, whatever, just not there for them. And grandparents are taking care of them, sisters or whoever. It's really sad. So it's not exclusively about the opioid, but it's sort of a leaping off point for
Right.
it. And it's a story about a friendship between a kid who's affected by that and this sort of this veteran who lives next door. That's kind of the the town, not crazy is a bad word, but the town guy that just everybody sort of takes care of. He's not quite right. He's not quite there, and the town takes care of him, and everybody's a little bit scared of him. But he and the kid develop a friendship, and they sort of save each other. And that's the basic premise. of the
Yeah, but I
story.
think that's really an important theme for kids, because I think kids, I don't know, probably around the world as well, but I only know about the kids in this country really, and that they need some sort of, how shall I say, outside structure that they can relate to help them more or less get through the problems they have,
Right.
because sometimes the family completely falls apart,
Right.
or is so involved in their problems that they need to have, even if it's a storybook character, to
Right.
get them through. I, as an adult, sometimes feel that way, that I have become enmeshed in some of my storybook characters, and I really, like, sometimes when I'm watching television and I'm watching the news, I say, I'm going to go to my storybook character,
Yeah.
because
It's too depressing. Yeah.
there's so much more.
I find it very therapeutic to write about things whenever you have a problem in your life. If you can somehow weave that into your writing, it's like therapy
Yes.
for yourself. And,
Sure.
And when I lost my father a few years ago, so loss is something you can deal with
yeah.
when you're writing. You can
Right.
write about your character, how they deal with it. You sort of tap into how you dealt with it and explore those themes. And you would hope that a kid maybe who's had some loss in his or her life would relate to those
Right.
scenes. And it can be
Right.
therapeutic for them too.
Yep. So I hope to hear that does the new book have a title?
Yeah, it's called Christmas Carol and the Shimmering Elf. And this is where
Okay.
the story is basically a time travel story where the bad guy goes back in time and keeps the Defenders from ever being formed. So
we'll
Carol
be-
has to go back and fix
and
things.
help them out, fix
Yeah.
them.
And it
So
comes
I
out in
hope
November.
to hear about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.